Boom! I'm live. This is live. I'm Hiko Simon. Welcome. I'm trying a bit of a different lighting arrangement. Usually I've got the face on light, but actually it looks okay like this, so I might just stick with this. Anyway, let's get it started. I can't be too noisy. This house is very quiet at the moment, but it's great to see you all. I'm Hiko Simon. Welcome to Tokyo Tonight 2 live. And you know what? I think I am going to turn on the light here. Just improve the FPS a little bit. There we go, a bit of extra clarity. Last week I went to go and see the Sunwolves live. They beat the Auckland Blues, my team, the Japanese rugby team. That was kind of awesome. I see that the stream is working, so that is great. Last week, I'm sorry, again, my son was sick. We had to keep all the doors open in order to not wake him up. I just quietly played some music. The track I made was actually really good. It's available on SoundCloud. I'll show it a little bit later on anyway, but yeah, Hiko Simon on SoundCloud. You can download it or whatever, use it. It came out really, really well, so I was super happy with that. Hey, there's Bayer McNeil. Good to see you, Bayer. In fact, very good to see Mr. Cordy Chip and Jex Ashbolt, who woke up in time, which is awesome to see. Yes, hello, right back at you. Bayer, I don't know if you've seen the latest drama on Facebook. In fact, I always refrain from talking about Canada, but she's done another ethnic change, which does remind me of the time that she did blackface as a social experiment. I don't know what she's doing now. But some people are talking about, yes, she's apparently converted, and congratulations to her for that. But, you know, I don't really trust what's going on. It's kind of funny. I mean, that thing that basically upset you, it brought back memories of that for me. Auntie Liana, good that you made it. Good to have you along. Hello, summer holidays. Hi guys, good evening. Yes, that's right. Happy summer holidays to you. Yeah, believe me, you don't want to see it. It's okay. So I guess I've got 2 weeks of topics to catch up on. If we're going to do that, believe me, Jakes, you don't want to know. If you're interested, go see your channel. But believe me, you better not to go there. Just that's my advice. So yeah. Anyway, 2 weeks worth of news to catch up. So I will get right back into it. Hopefully, there'll be more people show up. But that's all good because I would do this even if I was by myself. That's just kind of how it is. Got a few exciting things going on at the moment that I can't quite talk about yet, but I will be able to soon, and they are awesome, and they're things that I can sort of share. They're little projects I've been working on for a few months, and they're starting to come together, so lots of cool stuff. Yeah, Jakes, that may happen. Kimmy Kim Kim, good to have you along. Boom, boom, boom. Kimmy Kim Kim is in the room, good to have you along. Yeah, thanks, by the way, for those who stuck around last week just for the music. I actually quite enjoyed doing that. I don't get many chances to do that, but I quite like playing around, made some good music out of it. We should all even see if Hiko will still do this by himself. I would totally do this by myself. Seriously, you don't need to test it, but I'll still be here, man. So don't you worry about that, Mr. Cordy Chat. Anyway, so topics-wise, that is Kumamon. I quite like that, so I'm just leaving that as the magazine cover. That is the show from last week, so I've gone backwards from the newest to the I was adding from the newest to the oldest, which means that the oldest ones will come up first, but for this week. So let's go through and see what happened this week. First thing is a new survey of the most common names in Japan. So if you always want to know, when I was studying Japanese, everyone always assumed that Tanaka was like the default Japanese most common name, but actually Tanaka is not the most common name. It is, I believe, in fact, let's just reverse order here. Out of 120 million Japanese, nearly 2 million of those people are called Sato. Sato is the most common Japanese name, so there you go, that's one. Suzuki, the second most popular surname, actually pretty close there to Sato, but I definitely know way more Satos than Suzukis. Takahashi, that's another very common name indeed, 1.4 million. Tanaka, the old stereotype, it always used to be in my days when I was studying Japanese, it was always Tanaka or Suzuki. You know, I'm just going to adjust the aircon as well, because it might be hitting the mic like that, so let me just deflect it. It is hot at the moment. We've had a really hot week. Some days got up to like 35 degrees in Tokyo, just crazy. Ito up the top there, 1 million, still over 1 million people are called Ito. My old Japanese teacher was called Ito. Watanabe, Yamamoto, Nakamura, Kobayashi, all above 1 million. and Kato, which actually I would have thought Kato was actually more popular. I think I hear a lot of Katos and Satos in my work. But anyway, I thought that was pretty cool. Mr. Cordy Chip remembers an Australian gymnast called Katsumi Takahashi. I don't remember that at all, but there we go. Bayer McNeil, there are 3 Satos in his office. So there we go. I mean, Bayer's office contributes like 30% of that's probably not right. Maths isn't my strong point. But yes, there are a lot of Satos. I've got like 3 or 4 Satos at work. In fact, actually, yeah. I was trying to think. A couple of Saito. I'm surprised Saito isn't on this list, actually. We can't use Saito to call people names. Because, yeah, we have to use first names for that. 1994 Commonwealth Games. Okay, well, that's interesting. There used to call each other. Very, very good memory for Australian gymnasts with Japanese names. They're very impressive. So I thought that was kind of interesting. That is the show from last week. This is, yes, so this game actually, so the Auckland Blues, many times champion of the toughest professional rugby club championship in the world, the Super Rugby Championship. Japan got a team added to it 2 years ago. They've consistently been near the bottom of this table, and a lot of New Zealand media have been saying, why do we have to play this Japanese team when they lose all their games? But there again, at the same time, the Rugby Championship organisers, they thought it would be a great idea to have an expansion team from Japan that would play half of its home games in Singapore to try to boost the popularity of the sport in Asia. The problem being that they're not from Singapore, and no one in Singapore is interested in watching, so half of their home games they lose to like a country that's got nothing to do with Japan. I think they've only played at Chichibunomiya, the main Tokyo stadium for rugby, like 2 or 3 times this whole season. And when you have to travel to South Africa, Argentina, Australia, New Zealand, you know, there's a lot of travelling involved, and home advantage means a big difference. They only get 2 games at home, and everyone's been talking about how terrible the Sunwolves are. Well, one of those games, they beat the many times champion Auckland Blues by 3 tries to 8. They scored 8 tries, and they were good tries. True, the game was played in 44-degree heat. It was apparently on the pitch. They recorded it was 35 degrees up in the stands. I was there, although I paid to get covered seats which had some shade. But even then, you know, I mean, I had to pay $200 for that for the family. But on the pitch, it was something like 44 degrees. Apparently, was recorded. But both teams had to play in the same conditions. But that's the home advantage. I mean, that's actually, I would say, unsafe to play, and I would agree with that. But there again, all these New Zealand teams saying that Japan sucks. Well, come and play them in Tokyo every week in 44 degrees and see what you think, right? So, yeah, it was a fantastic match to watch, and it made me actually really upset that they don't get to play more proper home games like the much stronger teams from New Zealand, Australia, South Africa do. But it was fantastic to watch, and actually as a result of it, in fact, I went and bought one of those jerseys, which I've got hanging over there. And it's bright red, and to tell you the truth, I never felt motivated to buy it, but when I saw them trash my team, I thought, well, I'll start calling them my team after this, so that was pretty good. Charlie Brown, are you? Good to see you, man. And yes, it is, as you can see, it's working in beautiful 1080p, and yes, I regret ever having bought Wirecast. It's awesome. Mike J, 1592, your wife is a Nakamura. Well, congratulations on that. There we go. Comments too small to read again. Okay, let me increase the size of the comments. Let's do that. Oh, that doesn't work. Make sure you're watching in 1080p, by the way, if that works. You know what? I don't think that was so this is default. That was actually, you're right, it was too zoomed up before. So hopefully this works better. Thank you for the comment there. From Quint Ranked, I appreciate that. Okay, well, hopefully this works anyway. So that is all good. By the way, this should be available in 1080p, I guess, for the people who have the bandwidth for it. Let me know about that. Let's keep going, but that was a great game to watch. Very enjoyable. This was interesting. So some people are talking about how driverless cars might not encourage car ownership. It might just become the... well, I guess there are a lot of ideas that everything will become like Uber, for example. Hey, Lysander 45, good to see you. You know, where every cars will be shared or whatever. If you need a car will just come up and you'll get in the car and it'll take you somewhere. But there again, there is a thought here being talked about here by The Guardian that self-driving cars will increase car ownership, and I back this up as someone who lives in Tokyo. I would be more likely to own a car if the cars were self-driving, just because as much as I enjoy driving, it's such a nightmare getting out on the highways in and out of Tokyo, the traffic jams and everything. A car that I could just get into and relax and sleep or do whatever and wake up at my destination. I've talked about this before, but it makes a lot of sense. So I would be all for this, actually. This would definitely increase the chances of me buying a car. Hey, Gang and Kodos, good to see you. Hiko, I count for 2, so there are at least 6 watching. Well, thank you for that information. How many people are watching? I don't really care. If you are watching and you enjoy the show, don't forget to like and do all that good stuff. But there again, it's all good, you know. Well, like I said before, I would do this even if no one was watching. This is an interesting one. This comes up a lot. Anyone who's in Japan, tell me what you think about this. In Japan, it is pretty normal. In fact, apparently, the survey of 1,000 people in Japan showed it's more normal for older people. They expect office romances to happen. Even not that everyone. It's not that everyone does it, but we had order. Well, you couldn't really sleep on a horse. Well, maybe you could sleep on a horse. I don't know. But in any case, in Japan, it's a big difference. It's something I find very interesting about working in foreign companies, where whenever you have an office romance in a foreign company, you know, it's actually against corporate rules. And I've heard stories of people needing to get like official waivers. The Office, the American version of The Office, made a bit of a joke of it, where the offer, you know, the waiver from employment for having an inter-office relationship, they put in a frame on the wall as a certification of their love. Which I must admit, I've only ever worked in Japan, so I think it is kind of ridiculous that you'd have the ban. So I guess that raises the question. I'm just trying to think myself, have I ever dated someone that I've worked with? And the answer to that is no. I've kind of quasi-dated. I mean, I've come close to dating, but I'm not really. So I guess not really. But yeah, but that said, I mean, I know lots of people who have married, who were in teams that I've worked in, and I had no idea, almost in every case. I know, come thinking of the top of my head, I know about 5 or 6 couples that I've worked with that I was like, actually good friends with as well, and I had no idea, and most other people had no idea until they announced that they were getting married, that they were hooking up. But I guess that's the thing. For me, this is what it's actually all about, and what I like about Japanese culture, that you don't like go and blab about it, or you don't do, you know, people are very discreet, and I think that's why it works in Japan. But yes, this stuff definitely happens. Japan is incredibly accepting of in-office romances. So to be clear, this doesn't mean that it's okay to go and sexually harass or ask people out or whatever. It works because it's understood that it's something that you need to hide and not let even your best friends know it's happening when it's happening. But so long as people do it appropriately, they keep it a secret, then yeah, it's kind of tolerated. I see the comments there, don't crap where you eat, as people say in the States. That's pretty much my philosophy as well. When it doesn't work out, it's a terrible disaster, and I think that's where people, at least here, that's why they show discretion, because they are aware it might not work out. And again, I've heard stories as well of people who I found out later had been dating and had broken up, and you know, it was okay, they were still there because they managed to keep it all sort of under wraps while they were there. But yeah, apparently the people 40 to 59 or whatever were actually more accepting than those under, which I found interesting. So anyway, interesting article here. It's saved to my magazine, which you know, my Flipboard magazine and Twitter and whatnot. You can check it out on Rocket News. But yeah, it's interesting seeing the stats, which basically confirm it's like 85% of people think it's totally okay, so long as they don't let it interfere with their work or with other people. Are okay with inter-office romances in Japan. So there you go. Kang and Kodos, there we go. iPhone 7 on 1080p and works good on a 1 megabyte link. Well, there we go. It must be the connection. The not really part. Actually, not when I say not really, it's not as interesting as it sounds. I guess if I'm going to share some personal information, so. Before I came to Japan, I had a Japanese girlfriend. I was in fact engaged. We were agreed to be engaged like for a time. We lived together for like 4 years. We dated for like 5 years in New Zealand before coming to Japan, and for a few months after coming. We broke up pretty quickly after that. And because I pretty much dated this Japanese girl all through college, when I became single in Japan, I eventually became a bad gaijin and raging and everything. But I spent about a year not really knowing what to do, never having properly been sort of single yet. And I actually I did quite like a girl at work who I did actually like go to karaoke with every week, and I hung out with her a lot, and we were basically one of the reasons I love Master of None is it has a few situations like this. It was someone where she was with somebody who was overseas, so she was free in Japan, and I felt like it was inappropriate to make a move. It's exactly like the situation of the second series of Master of None. And you know what, I look back on it now and I was such an idiot, but I basically was dating this girl for about 4 or 5 months without really realizing myself or fully acknowledging that I was dating. And when I should have made a move, I didn't. I gave the whole thing away. That's why the regret of the situation is what triggered me to become kind of a bad gaijin afterwards, because I realized, dude, you got to make a move. So I kind of owe my later success at being single to the negative experience of this with a coworker. But there were lots of things that we were coworkers, and she had a boyfriend at the time who was in America. But so that's why I kind of, when I thought about it, that was the closest I think I've come to having an office relationship. But it never really became a relationship. That's the whole thing. It was kind of like it should have. If I could get in a time machine right now, that thing would have been a full-on office romance, but it just never quite worked out that way. So there we go. It's not quite as interesting, perhaps, as some of you are thinking, but there we go. That's how stuff is. Now, this is an interesting one, and this is an interesting one because there are two stories here. One is the story involving Ren Ho, the leader of the Japanese main opposition party, the Democrats, whose father is Taiwanese, and there have basically been 3 cases in the last 2 weeks of politicians resigning in Australia and Japan, or at least getting into a lot of trouble because of having dual citizenship. And I find the parallel really interesting. I almost became Ryan Boundless. Well, there is a I really actually don't know all that much about Ryan Boundless, so I don't understand that reference. Is that what Ryan Boundless did? Is that how he met his missus? I don't know. Maybe I did almost become Ryan Boundless. Who knows what might happen. To the story at hand, I learned for the first time. So New Zealand allows dual citizenship. I only have one country citizenship, but my dad has dual citizenship. My sister has dual citizenship, which is actually Australia and UK. I mean, not New Zealand. My mum is just Australian. My dad's British in New Zealand, and I'm just New Zealand. And that's all cool. And any member of our family could be a politician in New Zealand. Apparently you're allowed to be a dual citizen, but you're just not allowed to pledge allegiance to any other country while you are acting as a politician, a national politician in New Zealand. Australia allows you to be a dual citizen, but it doesn't allow you to, you actually have to renounce the second citizenship if you want to be a representative in the federal parliament or the national government of Australia. The only exception to that is the head of state of Australia, who is the Queen of England, who is not Australian, and she gets off the hook. She doesn't have to be Australian. In fact, she's never been Australian, and she doesn't even really care about Australia, but she's the head of state. But yes, apart from that, everyone else has to be Australian and Australian only, because they don't want any spies or, sneaky foreigners being national politicians in Australia. Which is a funny situation, because Australia allows people to be dual citizens. So they're supposed to clean that up before they become national politicians. Japan has another thing, which is that to be a civil servant in Japan, there are no specific rules around politicians, but to be a civil servant, you need to be a Japanese citizenship. You need Japanese citizenship. And the citizenship law in Japan requires that basically all Japanese citizens above 20 years old are not allowed to have dual citizenship, which is that they expect you to go and renounce your other citizenship if you want to retain your Japanese passport and the privileges of Japanese citizenship. But also the truth, as any half Japanese person above 20 will tell you, and a lot of other sort of Kikoku Shijo and other people, is that the Japanese government's pretty good about not really policing it. They pretty much allow people to have those second passports if they want them, so they don't really chase up and force you to renounce the foreign citizenship, but it's clear under the law that you are expected to do that, and you're not allowed to be a foreign national to be in the civil service. So here there are three cases that have happened. There was first of all, the lady in the picture was apparently born in Canada. Apparently she had a Canadian parent, so she was half Canadian, half Australian, and apparently, without her knowledge, up until like the time she was 3 months old, she was born in Canada at a time when all people born in Canada were automatically given Canadian citizenship. So which she was not aware of. So she believed that she did not have any Canadian citizenship to renounce, but it turned out that she did, and that she was elected for the Greens in the National Parliament of Australia, unknowingly holding Canadian dual citizenship with Australian citizenship. Another member of the same party, the Green Party of Australia, was elected to the in the same election, was elected to the National Parliament, and apparently he had New Zealand citizenship, which he had believed that he had renounced, but it turned out he hadn't done properly, so he also accidentally, according to his own account, had inadvertently maintained dual citizenship when he was not supposed to have it when running for national office. So what has happened is both of these members of the people who are legally dual citizens in Australia, for basically violating the very explicit constitutional and legal rules around who can be federal politicians in Australia, have both resigned, which seems pretty extreme to me, especially like, again, New Zealanders are allowed to live in Australia permanently without requiring other visas. It's pretty... Also, the other thing is that the reason that Australia recognises dual citizenship is, frankly, it was to allow migration of white people into Australia. It was to facilitate the colonisation of Australia, taking it away from the Aboriginals, just like for the same reasons that dual citizenship is allowed in South Africa. It was allowed in New Zealand, it was allowed in Canada, it was allowed in America. It's how we got more English people to come over. And so it's kind of strange to me in a way that they had that rule. But there again, they have that rule. So these people were forced to resign because although they were legally allowed to be dual citizens, they were not. They had to renounce that foreign citizenship, because they presumed disloyalty in Australia if you maintain it while being a politician. Now, Japan, the leader of the Democrat Party of Japan, her father, Renho's father, is Taiwanese. So she's basically ethnically half Chinese. Until like the 1980s. Half Japanese children born to non-Japanese fathers were not allowed to obtain Japanese citizenship, even though she was apparently born in and raised in Japan. She was forced to adopt the Republic of China, the Taiwanese citizenship of her father. The citizenship law was updated in the 1980s to allow her to take up Japanese citizenship, which apparently she did. But some claims came up actually a couple of years ago now that she never properly disposed of her Taiwanese citizenship. She never properly renounced it, which technically could be a violation of the rules around civil servants. And again, this came up recently again where she said that she did the paperwork, but it turned out she hadn't done the paperwork, and so now she's proved again that she's got Japanese citizenship and she has done the paperwork to renounce Taiwanese citizenship. However, she said it was an administrative oversight, it's not important, and she doesn't want anyone to talk about it anymore, and she's refusing to do anything. And on the one hand, and she's also said that anyone who's picking this up, there's a tendency for the right-wing, far-right in Japan to bring up all the time that she's part Chinese, and is part of the reason that they don't think she should be a Japanese, she should be a politician in the Japanese parliament. She considers that to be racist. She is Japanese, she's just ethnically part Chinese. But she's Japanese just like everyone else, and to call suspicion on that is just pure racism, and she's called it racism. But that said, she did actually maintain Taiwanese citizenship. So kind of an interesting situation. I would generally, if it weren't for the Australian situation, I'd be entirely kind of like more favourable towards Renho, where if it's an administrative oversight I can be sympathetic, but in Australia there's no sympathy at all, even if it's accidental. They treat it like a speeding ticket. They got dinged right out. So yeah, it's interesting anyway, the contrast. Australia is actually tougher on half Canadians and New Zealanders than Japan is apparently on half Taiwanese, in spite of the image that Japan's more xenophobic. So yeah, and by the way, the half Canadian there, that's her breastfeeding in the Australian Parliament, which she did sort of as a bit of a stunt that, you know, to show that people should be allowed to breastfeed anywhere. And she won a lot of plaudits for that, but it turned out she was a Canadian spy, and she's been forced to resign because of it. So there you go. I see lots of people talking here about in UK free speech means free speech. I don't know where all that sort of comes from. There are always limits to free speech, even in the UK. UK has very, very strict defamation laws. Also, you definitely cannot go into a movie theatre and shout spy or anything like that. So, you know, there are limits in every country to free speech, but there again, you know, free speech does tend to mean free speech. And good to see you, Bradley Ford. Glad that you can make it. Also glad to see James O'Hara made it in here, and Tai Nakamura. Good to see you in here. So there we go. So yes. What else we got here? So Renho discloses documents to prove her Japanese nationality. Again, this is kind of trolling by the right wing, but there again, she's also really kind of made a mess of things. Oh, we're talking about the Queen, are we? The Queen of UK is just like the Emperor of Japan, one kick in the ass of a living god. Mohammedans hate living gods and royal families. Well, that's a good point there. You cannot yell fire in a theatre. Well, I think that's true. That's the case that you always talk about with UK common law. Yeah, well, it is. I mean, so again, I was raised Church of England. I obviously haven't practiced 30 years, but as a kid I had to go there. And it's kind of interesting when I learned in high school the origins of the Church of England. The Church of England was basically Britain didn't want to be under the political control of Rome, of Europe, which is mostly Catholic. So they formed their own separate church. They sort of joined the Protestant gang, but they weren't really very hardcore Protestant. They were basically Catholic, just under a different name, at least in the origins, under Henry VIII. And so they decided that, you know, just like Catholics believe that the Pope has a hotline to, you know, basically the divine God has chosen the Pope to make rules for the Catholic Church, and so the fact that he's the Pope means that God must have chosen him, which means that the rules must be the rules of God. They did the same thing in England, the Church of England, except the defender of the faith was the King of England originally. And so yes, apparently they decided that Henry VIII would be like the Pope, would be the person that God chose to decide rules for England, which means that as someone raised Church of England, whenever I had a moral dilemma, I've shared this before, I always would think to myself, well, what would Henry VIII have done in this situation? And, you know, I don't know if you guys know anything about Henry VIII, but this was a religion set up for comedy. That's all I can say. Henry VIII is not the sort of person who should be setting up anything. But yes, for some reason, that's what I was born into. So yes, living God and all that. Hey, Tiko Sam is there. Well, there we go. I am good. I'm looking young and virile. That's how I roll. You know, I'm always like that, pretty much. So yes, indeed. Let's go through. Apparently, Korakuen at Lakwa, the big theme park there, they've got the big Ferris wheel. It's the oldest Ferris wheel in Japan. It's like a hollow Ferris wheel. It's like a big wheel that goes around. They're introducing karaoke booths into those, which is great. The only thing for me is, I've been to this place a couple of times. It's a fantastic Ferris wheel. The roller coaster goes through the middle of the Ferris wheel and through a hole in a building. It's really, really cool. But the Ferris wheel, the windows are just disgusting. They're brown, they're old, they're dirty. You can't really see out of them, which kind of defeats the purpose of a scenic Ferris wheel. And they're doing it for the upgrades. Rather than replace the windows, they're putting in karaoke machines. Well, that's great, but you know, I mean, I suppose it's good if you want to go on a Ferris wheel and not be seen by from the outside, which I hear some people do. But no, generally, you know, clean family fun. I want to see the view, and you can't really see the view very well outside of that. So there we go. He married the widow next door. That's right. Nothing wrong with that. What's wrong with Henry VIII? Apart from the fact that he instituted divorce by murdering all of his wives. Yeah, he's not a very moral. He's, you know, again, a good leader. You know, the substitute for the word of God on earth. Yeah, I'm not sure he was quite the right one. Henry VIII. That's right. In fact, I think it was actually 8 wives that he murdered. It was pretty good. You know, it got over the Catholic Church's issues with divorce. Anyway, technically, he was a widow every time. There was the track that I made last week, New Style Jam. It was actually pretty good. It was a bit of a smooth hip-hop track. It was kind of the first proper track I've made and uploaded in a while. It's there on SoundCloud. Go and enjoy it, please. It was actually quite a good track. I enjoyed it. SpaceX are awesome, and because they are awesome, they are planning to reuse rockets within 24 hours by 2018, which is like next year, so that's pretty cool. I like all of this. This means we're going to be getting into space pretty soon. I want to go. I want to be on a space station for that. So that's pretty cool. Another tech thing. So while Google Glass has been, it was kind of a bit of a bomb as a social media product by Google, but it turns out a lot of factories, a lot of businesses have very practical use for the sort of the augmented reality interface that it offers with the camera and the little screen that you can put inside any sort of glasses. So a lot of businesses have been using Google Glass basically with their own customized software inside it. And Google's figured out, well, there are so many people asking to use this with their businesses that rather than make it a social media thing, they're going to focus on relaunching it as a business thing, which is like, and frankly, I think this is great, and if this means that this sort of technology is going to continue to get pushed forward, I think in a way it shouldn't always have to be social if it's got a good practical use to it. So yeah. Security check. Well, that's the philosophy I take from Henry VIII when I'm dealing with moral problems. I think I just need to, we all make moral errors sometimes, but so long as we just keep trying, no matter how many times we fail, just keep trying again. I think. Was it only 2 of his wives? He only killed 2 of his wives. Well, that's not as bad as I thought it was. So there we go. Bradley Ford. Have I covered the SoundCloud news? I'm 2 weeks behind on this show, obviously. So about 2 weeks ago, there were rumors that SoundCloud was on the verge of going out of business. Fortunately, Chance the Rapper apparently contributed a lot of money to bail out SoundCloud, so they're back to being financially sound for now. I still hope that Google or Facebook or someone will buy them just to make them financially stable, because no one comes close to providing what they provide. As a platform, and it's important. I think it's a natural fit for Google anyway. But yes. So yes, SoundCloud looked like it was going away, but it looks like it's been saved. But it's been like this for a long time. I mean, it's a hard business to run. So yes, another thing that's happened with Japanese politics this week is, for me, the very biggest mistake that the Democrat Party of Japan made. When I thought it was great when they chose Renho because it's a fresh face, and I thought we were going to see a whole new sort of cleaning the house of all of these guys who really screwed up and ruined things for the Democrats by how badly they screwed up when they were last in power, including the last Prime Minister, Noda. So they brought in the young, ex-Asahi beer girl, half Chinese, Renho, to come in and be the leader of the party. And I thought, great, we're going to see a new look Democrat Party. But she decided to make Toshiko Noda the last Prime Minister, who to me just represents everything that the Democrats did wrong and why people don't trust them anymore. She made him the party secretary and basically gave him the de facto running of everything, even though she was the party leader. She made him the guy who runs the whole thing. And the Democrats have just bombed. They've just gone, like in the Tokyo elections, they got like 5 out of 160 seats. And this is the number 2 national party. Just people don't want to vote for them. They're unelectable. And it looks like she's poised to get rid of him finally. But she's had him there for 2 years. She's done nothing herself. She's just let this guy destroy the whole thing. So I'm very glad that she's getting rid of him. But frankly, I think having him there for 2 years has kind of damaged her as much as him. And I think that Hosono or Maekawa, or there's a bunch of other people who have been waiting for their turn to come up in the Democrat Party, and I hope that they're the ones who step up. I think Renho herself needs to step down myself. I guess you've all heard about this one this week. Apparently, in his interview with the Japan Times, I promised that I would not talk about Trump anymore. I actually blocked the word Trump on Twitter, and it's been heaven. It hasn't been perfect. I still see some mentions, but I've pretty much been able to block out Trump-related news on Twitter, which is great. However, this was just unavoidable. I saw people talking about this. When Donald Trump did a rambling speech to the New York Times in an interview, he mentioned at one point, he complained that the Prime Minister's wife, Akio Abe, does not speak English, and he didn't know why he was put next to her at this dinner party where he snuck off and planned to convert America into a sub-state of Russia, probably, when he talked with Vladimir Putin off on the side. So he was saying she couldn't even say hello, she couldn't say a word. And some people said, oh, look, she's trolling because here is her giving a commencement speech at a university. And it does look like a troll. It looks like she was just pretending not to speak English to avoid having to talk to him or socialize with him. And a lot of people are saying, oh, she's a hero or whatever. It's kind of hard to say what the truth is on this. There's been no comment on it by the Japanese government or Abe herself. Some people have come in and they've pointed out that a lot of Japanese tend to be very socially awkward to begin with, just culturally. To talk loudly in front of strangers is kind of awkward. And although she has been able to read speeches before, if she was coached and prepared, hell, I could probably do a speech in Portuguese if I was coached well enough for it, but I certainly couldn't have a dinner party conversation in Portuguese. I could say like 3 words. I could say legal, I could say como vai, tudo bem, and that would be it, which actually I guess is more than what she said to Trump. But the point is that she wasn't necessarily trolling him, but it looks like, yeah, she probably was. But there again, there's this thing as well. A lot of Japanese people reacted to the story saying, well, this was an international dinner. And where was this? This was in Europe or somewhere that the G20 was in Germany. This was in Germany. Neither of them were speaking German. Why is the assumption that she had to speak English to him? Why didn't he speak Japanese to her? Why is it that English speakers always assume that we have to speak their language? Which is also a fair point that actually a lot of English speakers don't even think of. They make it a criticism of someone, hey, that person doesn't even speak English. But this was in Germany, and she's the leader of another country. It kind of it does reflect a bit of arrogance, even on the part of commentators, that she either can or she can't. That why does everything have to be English centric? That's a fair complaint to raise, although there is an answer to that, which is that English, although it's like the number 3 language in the world, it certainly is the most widely used language. And it's a horrible language. I apologize for our sucky language that we've just enforced on everybody, in spite of the fact that it's a deeply grammatically flawed and illogical and difficult to learn language. But that said, in spite of that, it's just been, because of America, it's been popularly taken up, and this is why it's a mandatory school subject in Japan. And that's why people expect, and it's why English speakers become arrogant, expecting other people to speak their language. I remember when I learned Japanese in New Zealand, I had an elderly English citizen he would tell me how English speakers are not generally, they're not very good at traveling, and they're not good at foreign languages. He said that when he was a child and he went to France, the English practice in France was to first ask the French people what they wanted in English, and when they didn't understand, they would ask again louder in English. This is pretty much the way of the world, unfortunately. But there we go. I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe Trump could speak Japanese, and he was actually pretending not to speak Japanese to her. Not even a konnichiwa. Who knows? Probably not true, but who knows what really happened here. It is kind of cool to think that perhaps she was trolling him, but it's not necessarily the case. English Girlie asks, who's going to be PM in Japan next year? Well, whoever it's going to be someone from the LDP, and it's probably still going to be Abe, although he's becoming less popular at the moment if it's not him. Koike, the Tokyo governor, is probably very popular right now nationally, but she's in no position to become the national prime minister. It's kind of hard to say. There's no one really in a position in the national government to replace Abe yet, even though he's kind of faltering. It'll be someone from within the LDP at the moment. So, Tikyo Sam, indeed, you know very well that the ex-Australian Prime Minister, is it Kevin Rudd? He could speak Chinese, apparently very well. But he was a career diplomat as well, so that was his training and whatnot, but and that was the exception. Very much to the rule. Australians tend not to be very multilingual, but yes, that's right. That's good knowledge there. Hey, Mama Jess is in the house. Good to see you, Mama Jess. Welcome. You gotta go. It's nice to have you here, even for a moment. Sorry that you have to go. By the way, also welcome Nicholas Sofan Devon. Good to have you along. And World Traveller, and that's a Chinese word there. Saying it louder will help. Well, no, it doesn't, but that's how English people used to travel in Europe before they joined the European Union. Hopefully things are a little bit better now. So Nestle, I didn't actually know this. Nestle has a special Kit Kat-like showroom museum where, look at this, they have this Kit Kat place in Ginza, which has all these special limited edition, super expensive Kit Kats. including one with chocolate cake in the middle of it. It's super expensive. Where is this actually? The Chocolaterie Gâteau Mignon. Did they say where this is? It must be in Ginza. It looks like it must be in Ginza. So anyway, there's this kit. It is in Ginza. There we go. So, you know, very posh and upmarket. But check it out. They got all these different types of Kit Kats there, and all these different Kit Kat snacks. How much is this one worth? I mean, I have to find this. It comes in these, basically exclusive sort of box. And holy crap, a box of 3 there is $13, or 6 for like, geez, 20, well, double that basically. You know, like I think of 3,000 yen there is $30. But yes, I must admit, I am intrigued to try the chocolate cake scented Kit Kat. So there we go. Ghetto. I don't know how you pronounce it properly. It's definitely not ghetto. Well, it's kind of ghetto. It's a ghetto for rich people. What is that? I don't know what is going on with the comments there. Love symbol 1113 there. Play nice. In fact, you've used the C word once, so I'll tell you what. I don't even understand what Muricentric means, but if you use language like that again, you'll be blocked, maybe timed out or whatever. But please play nice. So yes, indeed. Well, geez, we're talking about chocolate cake scented Kit Kat. Seriously, people need to chill here. And yeah, I think everybody on that one, please play nice. So what else we got here? The Japanese first. So yes, new role model for avoiding awkward conversations. But I think maybe she's been given more credit than she should have done. Scottish. So this is an interesting one. A polling company did a survey in Korea and Japan, and while, as would perhaps be expected in Korea, most people feel 75% of South Korean people feel like the comfort women issue has not been resolved. Interestingly, also 54% of Japanese respondents feel the same way. So again, it's kind of hard because the average age of the comfort women that are left is like, in their 90s now. So they're starting to actually really die out. And there isn't a lot of time to do another deal, and the intention of this last deal was to settle it finally. But apparently, both countries feel like, and perhaps the Japanese are reacting to seeing and understanding that the Koreans don't consider the issue closed, which is a shame. Yeah, it looks like there's expectations in both countries that perhaps something more needs to be done for it to be resolved. Well, my feeling on this is I don't think that much more can be done. I just feel like this is just it's already at a stage now where I think these women are going to pass away. It's going to be considered to be unresolved, and Japan's going to be blamed for not resolving it forever. But I think part of the resentment to the deal in South Korea was that they didn't want it resolved. They resented the sorry, I can't help but notice the comments they're talking about cream eggs with Kit Kats. That would be pretty cool. I agree. So I don't know. I really hope that there is a way to resolve it, and it would be good if it could be resolved. And I think that there is, again, multiple attempts, sincere attempts from the Japanese side to resolve the comfort women issue. But I don't think Korea really wants it resolved. That's my take from here. So as a matter of fact, it's probably fair to say in Japan that people do recognize it's not resolved. The hope is that it is resolvable and it can be resolved, but there's no time left. So we'll see. But it is interesting that there's agreement in both countries on that point, at least according to the survey. YouTube has apparently, I used it once or twice, but I've basically never really used this. This is not the trimming tool or the enhancement tool that's inside the video editor. There's actually a separate YouTube video editor, like basically a cloud-based video editing tool buried deep within YouTube that I used a couple of times. It's a bit clunky, and I didn't find it that useful. You have to upload the clips onto YouTube to be able to edit them together. Lots of reasons it didn't work very well. YouTube's decided to call time on that one and to let that one go out. So yes, unfortunately they're going to be shutting down that feature of YouTube for people who use it. I know some people aren't happy about that. The Mongolian champion of sumo, Hakuho, he's just beaten Kaio's record for the number of wins in sumo, the number of matches won. He equaled the record during the current tournament and then went beyond it in Nagoya to 1048. So yes, this is another record that's been taken by the Mongolians now. They're getting a lot of the top records, including tournament wins and just general match wins. Hakuho, by the way, I think he's been in Japan since he was in high school, so he's been here for a long time, even though he hasn't become a Japanese citizen yet. He said the other day that he's considering it. I think he's married to a Japanese. Yeah, apparently, so I was a massive fan of Asashoryu, who kind of came up in the scene before Hakuho did. And I caught Asashoryu. I sort of noticed him. He rose up very, very, very quickly, and I caught him like when he was in judo, and he was like wasting everybody, even though he's much smaller than everyone else. And Hakuho followed up behind Asashoryu and became Yokozuna at the same time. And I must admit, Hakuho would not have gotten to this record quite so fast if Asashoryu had been there, because he was really the only person who you could ever say has been stronger than Hakuho. Asashoryu, of course, was basically kind of pressured into resigning over repeated incidents of just very bad behavior inside and outside of the ring. But that said, he was a great, great, great wrestler. Hakuho survived longer because he's just basically a bit less of a firebrand than Asashoryu was. And he's proven he's been a very good Yokozuna, and he deserves these records. So yeah, good to see that happening. Yeah, TQ Sam, amen to that, yes. I mean, on the one hand, he kind of deserved it, but he was a bit of a dick, but he was a great wrestler. And it was enormously entertaining watching him, so, yeah, it kind of sucks. For those of you who want to become a ninja like me, apparently Mia University is going to be opening the world's first ninja research center. The first problem is how they're going to be able to capture them, research them when they move so fast. The frames per second that ninjas move at is just completely uncatchable on film. So I don't know what kind of research they're going to plan to do. Maybe just summarizing all of the different ways that ninjas are awesome, perhaps. But yes, if you have ever wanted to come and just get a degree in ninjas, this is your chance right here. Well, so TK Sam, you're pretty much the Asashoryu expert there. That's actually quite impressive to see. Ko Hoshino, by the way. Also, there we go. Is this talking about Hakuho Ko Hoshino? Did he say at 16 years old he doesn't want to go back to Mongolia? Well, I think he's been back a couple of times, and he's a big hero back in Mongolia. And apparently his father and Asashoryu's father were both massive Mongolian sumo, Mongolian wrestling champions. So, yeah. So, yes. So I'm going to try not to get too distracted by the shenanigans there, but please, people, behave and calm down a little bit. So yes, anyway, apparently Mia, they want to promote ninja culture, and they're setting up a degree course in it, so there you go. Apparently a columnist in a weekly newspaper discovered that many of the priests used in weddings in Japan are in fact just cosplaying atheist foreigners. They're not even real priests. This was apparently shocking to the author, and said that if they really want to have a proper wedding, maybe they should actually just check if it's actually a real church or not, and if the foreigner is just an old English teacher in a suit, in some robes. But yeah, apparently while this was hugely shocking and disappointing to the author, the Japanese comments are, well, of course we knew that, of course, everyone knew this. Everyone knows that it's a popular part-time thing for foreigners to put on the old robes and go and become a priest. But I thought that was quite funny that someone was shocked by that. This picture, this is why it's good that Japan is in space. This is why they're on the space station. you know, America's doing all the, you know, the cool stuff. They're going to the moon, the big rockets and stuff like that. But Japan makes a floating circular robot that looks cute as hell with a camera in the middle for talking to people. I mean, that's like, for me, like, Japan's paid up its space dues for the next like 20 years just having that cute flying circular robot flying around on the International Space Station. World Traveller, it's been good having you along. Well, come back, same time, same place next week. We'll be wrapping up here in about 5 more minutes. But that is why Japan should be in space, right there. That is awesome, and yes. Okay, so now we are into the stuff from 2 weeks ago. Back up your SoundCloud music right now. This is when they thought it was going to go out of business, but Chance the Rapper did save it. If you want sushi, there are sushi robots that are going to be going into operation next month. This is what I was. This is from the week before, actually. UNESCO is planning to add the whole of Japan to World Heritage list in order to save time. Before that game that the Auckland Blues lost, the Auckland Blues rugby coach Tano Umaga said, "Go hard or go home." And after they lost, he went home. He's being pressured to resign now. It was a great game, however. Foreigners are shoring up Japan's shrinking population, and check this out, the latest stats on foreigners in Japan are here. And check it out, the number of foreigners there decreased obviously after the big earthquake and the nuclear accident and everything, but the Japanese population goes down, the foreign population is continuing to increase. And here are the numbers. It's a bit hard to see there, but let's see. In terms of changes in population, it's pretty interesting, this actually. So Japanese at 125 million at the moment, down 300,000 from the last year. Foreigners in total, however, are up 150,000, so we are replacing half of the population decline at the moment, and foreigners are up to 2.3 million foreigners in Japan. Of those foreigners, the largest group now is from the People's Republic of China. Taiwan there is listed separately. So the People's Republic of China, there are 695,000, up 30,000. South Koreans are actually, interestingly, they're down. They're the second largest group for 153,096. Bear in mind, most of those South Koreans are not people who migrated here from South Korea. They're people who have been in Japan since World War II, basically. So they're 4th, 5th generation, but born, and they've chosen to keep their Korean citizenship for the most part. However, they are decreasing at the moment. This is also actually the reason that South Koreans and North Koreans are decreasing. Partly the South Koreans going back, and partly the 5th generation South Koreans in Japan just throwing away their Korean citizenship and becoming Japanese citizens. That's another reason. Filipinos, the next biggest group. So by the way, bear in mind, none of these groups speak English, and these are the biggest foreigner groups. Philippines, 243,662, up 14,057, so they are contributing. Interestingly, Vietnam is up to 199,990, but they've grown by the largest amount there, second only, in fact, actually even more than the Chinese. So far and away the fastest growing group of foreigners in Japan right now are the Vietnamese, who have passed the Brazilians. Wow, which is actually, that's incredible as well. So they're currently the 4th biggest group of foreigners in Japan are Vietnamese. I haven't actually run into that many Vietnamese, but they obviously are a rapidly expanding group. And bear in mind, a quarter of the Vietnamese in Japan arrived in the last year, so that's actually amazing. The Brazilians continuing to increase, not decrease, 7,486, currently up to 180,000. Then a big jump down in numbers. US citizens in Japan, 53,705. Bear in mind, about 30,000 of those are US military, so the real number there is really about 20,000. And of those, about half of those are like in Tokyo. Again, excluding US military from that, but yeah, anyway, the next biggest group are US. Taiwanese, about the same number, but again, the same situation as with South Korea. You get a lot of Taiwanese, like the opposition party lead, who just have legacy citizenship from after World War II, and a lot of them are naturalizing, but in spite of that, people are still moving here, so increased by 4,000. Indonesians are increasing slowly, up to 6,940, up to 42,850. Remember that the nurses at the moment, they're trying to get Indonesian nurses to come to Japan. North Korea, actually that number's gone down a long way, and it's continuing to go down. It's down to 32,461. The number there when I got to Japan was like more than 100,000, and what's happened there is a lot of the North Koreans have just pretty much, rather than maintaining North Korean citizenship, have just given up and become Japanese, for various reasons, the abduction issue, a bunch of other stuff. Another group that's growing, look at that, India now is up to 28,667, up 2,423. All other nationalities, which I guess includes me, we make a combined total of 399,000, which is less than the South Koreans and the Chinese. However, we have increased more than the Chinese, so generally speaking, foreigners across the border are definitely increasing. 37,683, so that's the state of play with foreigners in Japan. That's very interesting data. And we're doing our bit to compensate for the shrinking population thing. So yeah, we're coming up on time, but yes, let's Toshiba's getting delisted, GoPro's making a is going to be releasing a 360 camera, and yeah, Dentsu's going to get charged for illegal overtime, all that sort of stuff. Maybe I'll finish it here. I did a Gaijin Confession Friday. I've lived in Japan 19 years, but most friends who come here as tourists see more of the country than I have. The reason for that is that I've been working my ass off since I got here, and when I get any vacation time, I spend it going to see family or leaving the country more often than not. So I've actually traveled in Japan surprisingly little. I've only been like Osaka once. There's a lot of Japan I haven't seen, and I would like to see more, but is what it is. So that's it. I know people like me playing a bit of music on the end of the show. I did that last week, so how about I'm gonna go out with some music. I hope you guys all have a very good week. Let me set this up. Boom, 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 boom. And thank you for joining. And yes, James O'Hara, that is correct. 360 cameras are not very good because the resolution is too low. They're really got to be 8K to really work a decent resolution all the way around. But that said, they are improving, and we'll see how good they get with the GoPro. So let's plug this in and do a musical outro, and the iPad should be coming online in a sec. Let's switch the display mode. Let's get this all over here, and let's get it reading the iPad. Come on. Hang on a sec. It's not picking up the screen. Let me try it this way. That's working. That's really strange that is not working there. Okay, well, if I can't show the screen, I will just go back to the iPhone. And, oh, there it is. Okay, so let's just do the outro. I don't have anything prepared, by the way. I really like the track which I put on SoundCloud. I can show you. It's called New Style Jam, and it's pretty cool. And I can play a bit of that, but I might make a new track. In fact, tell me in the comments right now, do you want me to make a new track or to play you loops from the track which I uploaded during the week, which is more fully baked? Which would you prefer? Let's get started. The first couple of votes on a new track or loops from the old track, let me know, and I'll go along with that. So TQ Sam says new. It's one vote for new. I'm going to take like 4 more votes. track. Akio Abe wins. This is the one that I've got on SoundCloud at the moment. Okay. Let's go new. Do another chill track. I'm in the mood for a chill track, so let's make this. What should we make this about? Let's make it. In fact, let's take a look at what we've got a nice drum beat for. Boom. Okay, let's do 86, and we'll use one of those. Okay, 86. Let's make it very sharp, and let's turn this up. That's the show. Have a good night, everyone. See you next week. Oh, peace. Boom. That's it. Okay, see you later.